stay alive. Sits hum deep like a heartbeat pulse. Retro dreams where we are lost. Neon waves take us back in.
Welcome, everybody. It's your boy, Matthew Donner. We're back with a very special episode of BSW Podcast. Today we got somebody from very, very far away. The Kid of Rock himself. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me. It's awesome to be on.
Very exciting. I saw your post and I got to, see some of your stuff that's out there. And I'm really intrigued. A, you do a lot of great stuff out there, and B, you're very young at doing it.
Yeah, I'm quite young, and I think that's a big advantage for me. I'm very lucky to be doing it at this age.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, in the States, they really don't allow it. I mean, not many of the schools will start training that young.
Yeah, yeah.
But
It's in the UK to start really young.
yeah, it's different as you get into, out of the US. And right now, I mean, to be honest, I feel like there's a big international wrestling scene. You got Sweden, Holland, Finland going. You got the UK, you got Ireland, you got all these different places now that weren't necessarily operating 15 years ago or so. It's becoming bigger. WWE is traveling more across the world. AEW is traveling across more of the world, and this, brings wrestling to places that might have not known it. What got you into it?
So I was first drawn to it. My dad was just flicking through the channels, and I first discovered wrestling when I think it was the Elimination Chamber. It was, I think the Shield. I think it was the year the Shield were in it, and I was drawn to it ever since. But I think I first started liking it was because of all the craziness, and even the storylines. The storylines that go on with it. I didn't really understand it at the time. I was maybe only about 5, but till this day, I've just been hooked from it ever since, and being able to be a part of it has been incredible.
Now, how old are you now?
I'm 13.
13. See, now I've heard that story, by similar wrestlers I've interviewed, but they'll be like 18 when they've gotten to step in or start to journey of that dream. For you, it wouldn't be that much longer. When did you start training this year, or did you start training prior? When did you start like getting to do like ring training?
I started training, I would say 4 years ago. So when I was 10 years of age, so 3.5 years ago, I started training at Northern Ireland Professional Wrestling.
Wow, that's impressive. I mean, one to be that physical, to be able to do the physical stuff, and then also to have the mental awareness to keep everybody safe and to do that aspect of it. Um, but I do approve. I mean, because in the U.S. I know the wrestling is but the amateur boxing is. I mean, what's the difference? If you're going out taking slugs and punches,
We're losing you a wee bit on the sound. I can't really hear you.
I was just saying, with amateur boxing, they allow a younger age. They should in the States allow a younger age for wrestling. Now, when you were training, was it a school of children, or was it like everybody that was a wrestler would go in and train?
Well, in the place, Northern Ireland Professional Wrestling, I believe it's probably the premier promotion for in Northern Ireland. But we're the only people in Northern Ireland that actually accept kids doing wrestling. I think about it changing now, but at the time we were the only kids that were doing it. There was a lot of adults. There was an adult section and a kids section, and I'd already followed their shows. I went to a lot of their shows. It was called Roar is War, like Raw is War. It was kind of a follow on of that. So I'd went to the show and watched it, and then I kept going to their shows. So then when they announced that they were doing kids training, I thought I better start early, and I've never looked back since. And I've been able to. So it was a kids class that they were doing, but there was also adults involved in it. I think we've lost them. Just wait for this guy to come in again. For Satchey Stoner. Hopefully we can get him back in again.
Okay, sorry about that, folks. Believe it or not, it was the weirdest thing. I had my phone crossed up and overheated, shutting us down. But the stream was still going live. Sorry about that for a second. I'm gonna keep it out of that area. But where were we? We were talking. At the time, you were the only school running with kids. You would go and check out the adult shows.
It's really hard to hear you here.
Um, okay, let me try now. How about now?
It's a bit better, but it's not the same.
Okay. Let's try this.
Just very freezy, but
Now,
I'll try to understand you a bit.
yeah, I know, Mighty Molly. The sound is terrible right now, unfortunately. We're having mishaps.
It seems okay now.
Okay. Um, so you would check out the adult shows while training. I'm guessing you still do as this one big promotion. And someday, you'll move on from the kids section to the adult section of that promotion.
Yeah, probably. Hope most likely.
I mean, obviously that's something to strive for. But now let me say, outside of that promotion, have you worked other shows, worked other promotions, or is it just not available for your age yet?
I wouldn't say it's available for my age, but we've been speaking to a couple of other promoters that have said they'll put me on a show, but maybe just not doing the exact kind of wrestling because a lot of places, a lot of companies and places wouldn't do that. But at the minute, I'm more focused on building myself in my own company, Northern Ireland Pro Wrestling. I've been able to have matches and a match recently, so I'm just happy with building the place that I am at the minute, and then maybe if I get more matches, I'll go to different places. But I'm more focused on taking step by step.
Yeah, I mean, you're still very young in this game. Like I said, a lot of people, that I know started 17, 18, not, 10. So by the time you reach 7, 18, you're already a 10-year vet almost. It's kind of wild to think, but it's a good step. You'll be able to be booked anywhere in the world at that point. I mean, you'll have the credibility and just the knowledge. Being in the ring so many times, and I find that mesmerizing just because, like I said, I've interviewed a lot of young wrestlers out of school. And again, they're, at that 17, 18-year-old level, not the mature level that, I wouldn't think, I think of my son, he's going to be 8, I don't think he would be mature enough in 2 years to get in the ring. Physically, yes. Mature enough, no, to be able to, not harm your opponent. Like I said, to know the logistics of pro wrestling. Um, Now let me ask you. I mean, obviously you went through the school, so they taught you all that. Is your move sets or the kids' move sets similar to the adult, or is there some stuff they were like, no, we don't want you doing?
Well, obviously, maybe when I started at 10, 11, you wouldn't, we wouldn't really be doing heavy bumps because obviously with my bones still growing, and obviously the coach might get a lot of criticism about it. But um, with my bones just still growing, and stuff like that, I wouldn't really be doing heavy bumps. But when it comes to, I like you. When I started doing wrestling and when I'm doing, I have realized I love doing British chain wrestling, like old technical wrestling, and that's one of the styles that I like doing the most. And most of the kids can do it because it's not too hard on your body, even though it is complicated. So yeah, we would do a lot of things the adults would do, just maybe not the big heavy bumps that a lot of them would take.
Yeah, chain wrestling's underrated. I mean, I wish more people could do it. It brings it back to a time when wrestling was wrestling. That's part of what, Olympic style wrestling would be your other style of wrestling. Like you said, not too taxing on the body, just more of a chess game. How is this going to look logistically? How is this going to look to the fans? And is it going to get the right tension? But it's a solid base, honestly. I mean, if you can chain wrestle, then everything else will kind of come. A lot of people can do all the flippy stuff, but they're very not good at chain wrestling.
Yeah, and I think in wrestling, I don't really agree with death matches or maybe sometimes in hardcore wrestling if it matches the storyline, but death matches and slamming people through tables, that's stunts, that's not wrestling. I think what wrestling is more is chain wrestling, wrestling that was seen in old school British wrestling, and that kind of wrestling instead of death matches and throwing people through tables and stuff. So if like imagine in the middle of a wrestling match the rope broke and someone had to do hardcore wrestling and they didn't know how to wrestle, what are they going to do?
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, that's a whole nother scene too. But I mean, again, just I never knew that it existed until I came across. Someone just asked, "How did you guys come across you?" Well, I came across you in a podcasting, group. I go out there periodically. I find other, wrestlers and or promoters or people that are in the industry in both wrestling and in the horror world, and I like to interview them. I like to talk to them. I've interviewed a lot of local people, but now I'm trying to get out. I try to keep it independent as most as I can because I really do believe in the independent scene as a whole. WWE is great and all, but they got their own writers, they got their own $1 million, they got their own way to market themselves. A lot of the indie guys don't. So I let them use the podcast to push them, to push their matches, to push their product. Um, I know you have your own podcast venture yourself, and I'm going to let you talk about that in a little bit as well. And you can push that and get hopefully some of my listeners to view that and watch that. And that's the goal. There's the end of it. There's a lot of fans for everybody. You don't have to really guard fans. Fans can be fans of multiple podcasts, multiple wrestlers, multiple scenes, multiple promotions. There's enough to go around. But yeah, that's how I did meet you, and like I said, from that point on, I was just kind of intrigued that there is wrestling again that young, is because I'm not used to watching a lot of wrestling from Europe or I would say overseas. I've watched some Japan wrestling, and then I've watched some of what happens at Slam Wrestling down in Finland, but I haven't really watched a lot of the UK shows.
Yeah, I think what you're doing is awesome because a lot of people maybe wouldn't like indie wrestling; they would more watch WWE. I know when I was a kid, I would have thought WWE was the best style of wrestling, but when you see the kinds of stuff that you see, even in my promotion, Northern Ireland Pro Wrestling, my coach Nathan is one of the best coaches there is, and he actually and he's training some of the newer talent, and a lot of people don't understand how big how important indie wrestling is because a lot of people think, oh, WWE is the best, but think about where 80% of these WWE talent came from. They came from other indie coaches and indie promoters. So promoting indie wrestling, what you're doing is awesome.
Thank you, I appreciate it, and definitely. I mean, if this was 1980s, I would say okay, or early 90s. WWE had a lot of its homegrown talent or people coming from homegrown schools. But you're right, a lot of the major stars today that you see on TV have all done the independent circuit prior. A lot of them, very few haven't. You know, but even John Cena, he worked the indie scene. It wasn't in this
Yeah,
area. He worked in
OVW.
California, but they all come from somewhere. A wrestler doesn't wake up and go, "I'm going to be in the WWE today." You have to learn, train, and then work before you can get to that level of a, I would say wrestling, but also just production value because it becomes something different.
Yeah.
For you, for the indie scene, you guys are working a lot for the local crowd, and you want to get them as into it as much as you can and give them the show of their life. For the people on the TV, yes, they want to do that, but they also need to do that for the people at home because there's a lot more of them watching than there are in that arena. So it becomes a little bit of a different game of what you're playing. But I love the indie scene because it's much more intimate. I can go to a show and I can meet the wrestlers. I can talk to them. I can get autographs. It's not going to cost me my life fortune. It's not going to cost me $5,000 to get a photo. $20, cool. It helps them. It helps me. I meet somebody new or get somebody, something I like, and they get some extra money that helps them, pay the way. Because, at least around here, a lot of the wrestlers, they might not get paid as much, or they get paid, a certain amount, but then they work off the rest of it as merch sales, how much you make on the merch. That helps. Every bit helps, as you must know. But it's great to see. So you have a whole promotion now, all kids, and basically, I mean, I'm guessing some adults there running this thing.
Oh yeah, obviously, yeah. The yeah, it's not just a kids promotion; it's Northern Ireland Pro Wrestling. So they would have their adults who wrestle most of the shows, then they'll have their kids as well. So we're hoping to start up a actual kids show sometime. We're hoping for it to sell out if it gets enough interest. We might be starting up a show called Kidamania, where it's just an all kids pro wrestling show.
It would be interesting. I do think there's a market for it. Um, I do. I do think there's a market. I mean, there is some questions, like I said, especially in the younger age, with like you said, the growing of the bones and the growth and concussions and what we've learned about concussions and CTE and all of that. Starting so young, taking the bumps, but if things are kind of protected and things are kind of done a little bit differently, I don't really see the issue with that. Similar like amateur boxing to boxing, you wear face masks and you wear lighter gloves and such, and then you go to pro boxing, you're doing something a little bit different there. You're taking full on, you know, 12-ounce gloves to the head. So I mean, I can see it. I don't know if the U.S. will ever get it though. I think people would guard it too much. I mean, I think a lot of people. Well, I mean, there'd have to be rules, and I mean, I like that you said, the kids work the kids and the adults work the adults. You don't have kids really working adults, which makes it obviously safe for everybody. You don't have no incidents happening. Um, because obviously a lot of incidents can happen in wrestling, and it just brings the whole industry down when these things happen. You have sexual misconduct out. Right now the biggest thing is that I don't know if you've seen over there, but the UFC fighter that shot on the wrestler and just almost killed him. But these things bring the whole industry down as a whole because to the person that likes wrestling, they understand. But to the person that's new to it or just watching from the outside, they're like, "What is this? This is carnival like. This isn't something
Yeah.
real. I'm not going to invest my time and money in it."
Yeah, I agree. And within wrestling, like the, you have like the faces and the heels and stuff like that. And that's what I love about wrestling. You have the different characters, but also within wrestling, if they're doing a kids wrestling show, um, I don't see why people don't like it because I understand that you can get injuries. I understand that you can get concussions and stuff. But the boxing is way more dangerous, and they're letting kids do boxing. So I don't understand the problem with wrestling.
I do. Yeah, I do love wrestling, and I love watching wrestling. I've been covering the independent scene since around 2019. I have wrestled a few matches. They were okay. I was older though, so it wasn't so much fun. When I was younger, wrestling wasn't really built for the 5'8" person. Nobody wanted a 5'8" wrestler. So the little man was out. So I did actually go the boxing route because they would take any size and just match you up by size and weight.
Yeah.
And then later, as I got older, wrestling came back into my life, and it I met some people. They trained me a little bit, and enough to do a match. And I had a few matches. Nothing long, just a few segments. I did some managing. I mostly like to film. I like to videograph. I like to do editing. I like to commentate. I like to do backstage stuff if I can. Now more than getting in the ring. But kudos to the people that do it because there's nothing easy about it. Everybody makes it look simple. I went to, I remember my first training, I went to New England Pro Wrestling Academy. It was just for a day. It was a day camp to see if you like wrestling. But they have you doing all the things. They have you running the ropes. They have you falling over the ropes. They have you jumping off the top rope. They have you doing rolls, bumps, everything. And, just running the ropes wasn't fun. You're bruised up from the ribs on. Just, jumping off the rope was a hassle because you have to, gain balance. And, I ended up having to have the guy hold my hand. There's a lot of things that you guys just do because of memory, muscle memory, or just your natural talent, you're athletic, that makes it look just super simple. That if the average person tries, they're going to end up breaking their neck.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. Within wrestling, you do need to have a great. You need to be great physically as well. So you need to have a build, but also I think what is really underestimated in wrestling is like the smaller guys because before X Pac, Shawn Maltman came in, there was nothing really for smaller guys. So I give a lot to him, and a lot of the smaller guys now can wrestle. So it's not all about physique, but it's also about being able to actually wrestle in the ring.
It is. Back when like I said, I started watching wrestling in the 80s. So, you had people like Hogan and Andre the Giant and King Kong Bundy. They didn't really rely on their wrestling skills so much. They relied on physique, their charisma, drawing the crowd, and just giving, more of a show. Hogan was very limited. He could wrestle. I've seen him do some amazing matches in
In
Japan.
Japan.
Same thing with Andre. Andre could wrestle. They all could wrestle, but they were told to dumb it down. Less was more for these characters because they wanted to emphasize their physique. They want to emphasize their strength and their power. But that did change, as we got, like you said, X Pac came into it. Even prior to him being X, when he was 1, 2, 3 kid, him beating Razor Ramon, that was a big milestone for a lot of things because it's like, oh my God, this young kid just beat a pro wrestler.
Yeah, I've seen that before that match, and it did defy the odds. For young people, young people, and also smaller people getting into wrestling. People who are below 6 foot. I think X Pac was actually quite tall. Like he was way taller than the average person, and he was recognized as small for a wrestler, which is crazy.
It is, but I mean, but then like we have little people wrestling still here. So then you have like the littlest of people doing full on moves, full on stuff. And that's still a thing. That's actually becoming like more popular over the last few
Yeah,
years. We're getting a
the
few more
MWF.
promotions, and it's starting to really take off. But in some ways, it's good to be able to go in. It makes it more inclusive that almost everybody can wrestle. In some ways, it makes it a little weird when you go in, you're watching a match, and you're like, "Well, that guy looks like an average Joe. He could be working over here." That didn't usually happen back in the day. If you've seen a wrestler, they only could do one thing: wrestle.
Hmm.
But now let me ask you, because you work your shows, are they local to where you live?
Yeah, yeah. For I know America's quite big, so 40 minutes would be nothing for you guys. But over in Northern Ireland, people complain maybe about having to travel for 40 minutes. But in the same country, I suppose, and it's maybe outside of the city. But yeah, it's in a place called Carryduff where the training happens, and in the shows they'll have their own dojo where they do their own shows.
So do people recognize you now as like as a wrestler when you walk around?
When I'm in there, yeah, yeah,
And I take it you still go to school, right?
yeah. I still go to school.
Do people ever like they obviously know you wrestle, you do wrestling. Do they ever like bring it up? Has it become a thing? Have they told you like no wrestling in school?
No, no, not much people. I don't really tell much people in school or anything that I wrestle. It's something that maybe people know if they watch my YouTube channel or something like that. But I don't really bring it up. It's just I'm just one of the kids. It's not. It's I don't try to make myself out to be Scott Steiner or anything.
No, I know, I appreciate that too. That's a good way to look at it. I mean, I know a lot of people be like, "Oh, look, this is cool. This is what I can do." And I mean, And then you can, I mean, it's always okay to brag a little bit, but you don't want to put a target on your back, and you don't want to make something negative. If you guys got something good going on in your country where younger kids are allowed to wrestle, you don't want all of a sudden, there'd be a wrestling match at your school because everybody found out there's a wrestler, and all of a sudden it becomes bad press. It becomes negative.
Yeah.
Yes, they can, Darren. What I also like is sometimes some of those David and Goliath matches, when you see a smaller guy take on a bigger guy, it's good storytelling. It really is. I'm just reading some of the comments, and Darren
Yeah.
was talking about smaller wrestlers, being sometimes better to watch, and they are. They can do sometimes more versatile things and things that make sense. It didn't make sense for a 7 foot person to jump off the top rope, but a 5'8", 6 foot person can easily jump off.
Yeah. I think
And
that even
I think lucha style helped too.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think even the micro wrestling, the likes of Little Show, who kind of paved the way for them and people like that. Um, and they have brought little people wrestling to the limits because you would have seen maybe the WLC match or something, but it would always been a mockery to smaller people like comedy wrestling, like El Torito and Hornswoggle. But now that you see the likes of micro wrestling, yes, there is some comedy, but they're also putting themselves in as full scale wrestlers. And tomorrow I get to interview one of the micro wrestlers and stuff, so it'll be good to hear that.
That's awesome. That's great. I've been to a few shows and I've interviewed a few people, and like I said, it is different. I went to one show the other day, not the other day, last year, and it was full jam packed. You're right. The whole demo of what back when I used to watch wrestling very early on, you'd have like Three Little People versus King Kong Bundy. It'd be like a slapstick comedy match, almost like a Three Stooges thing. Then you got into Hornswoggle and Dink the Clown and all these other characters that were like just comedic. But walking into that show, there was some differences. Little people were only wrestling little people. There was none of this little people versus big people. And then also there was just this level of seriousness. These guys were all serious characters now. There was no joking around. They made jokes, they made some comedy stuff, but it was amongst themselves or against themselves. It wasn't so much somebody else belittling them or making them feel less than. Which, I mean, again, I was impressed at. I was impressed at the whole show, just how well it drew. I mean, I've been to a lot of wrestling shows, and to see it sell out like that completely. And a lot of the fans weren't even so much wrestling fans; they were fans of the little people.
Yeah. And even and that brings a good market to wrestling as well. If someone's not a wrestling fan, they'll go to see a micro wrestling show. But I think what you're saying is so true. People at this age, people think that the people have this opinion that they can't do this kind of thing. They have this conception that they can't do this kind of thing, this misconception, and it's just so wrong. Because maybe if they're smaller guys, they can still do exactly what we can do. Just have to maybe work harder for it.
Well, I mean, you proved that. I mean, kids can wrestle. So I mean, if kids can wrestle, little people can wrestle. I mean, wrestling is now probably very, very inclusive. Almost anybody can wrestle if they learn and train. I don't think everybody should wrestle. I mean, there's people out there that definitely shouldn't because they don't understand the logistics of it, or they might not be physically able to do half of the stuff. But if you're physical body and able minded, and you want to wrestle, right now is the time to go into a school and learn because you can train, you can learn, you can actually get somewhere. I mean, we have a WWEID program running heavy right here
Yeah,
in
really
England.
ID.
Bunch of people have been real ID that I've known, that I've watched come up, from the indie scene. And now I'm watching them on Tubi, on Evolve. It's a cool experience to see the arc in indie wrestling because you can see people start at the bottom, make it to the top, get signed. But now is the time to do it. We are in a boom era of pro wrestling.
Absolutely, the kind of era that we were in it. But in Northern Ireland, where I live, the kind of wrestling that we saw before, there was people that paved the way maybe for us, and when it hit maybe the year 2000, it kind of stopped because of the American wrestling, like WWE maybe taking over British wrestling. There was more of kind of reality of wrestling, so the wrestling in our country, Northern Ireland, kind of stopped, and there was a lot of gimmicky wrestling. So now, even in the era that you're right about the boom of wrestling, now even in the era, this era that I'm in right now, with NIPW, the place that I wrestle for, with kids coming in. It's a perfect time to start wrestling, and we have such a good new generation of wrestlers coming in.
There is, and there's not just one company. It's not just WWE. I mean, there's also AEW. There's New Japan you can get over there. I mean, there's a lot of places that you can go now, and have a lucrative wrestling career. You don't just need that one company. You know, after WWE bought out the competition, there was a little bit of a lull of places to go for a while. It's like you go there, you're gonna go to Impact. There's not much else to go. Now there's a lot of companies, you know, that you can go to in the States and in out of the States that are just very lucrative wrestling. You know, Germany has a great scene too, with like a WXW out over there. They're a very nice promotion. You know, I've seen a lot of great people going from here over to there and vice versa. Japan's still a very thriving scene. And like you said, you know, Ireland, England, it's all just kind of coming up. I think within the next 5 years, there'll be even more of it. I think more people will be involved in it. More people will want to be involved in it as major companies keep continuing to throw shows in other countries. Like I said, it shows people that hey, this is what wrestling can be, and this is what wrestling can do, and if you want it, this is what can happen. And this inspires not only people to want to wrestle, but it inspires people to open up companies, and open up promotions, and then that's where people can get chances to wrestle. The more promotions, the more exposure. You know.
Absolutely.
Is there anybody on the scene right now that you're eyeing that you're like, I want to wrestle at your
Yeah.
level right now?
Well, he actually said he wanted to have a match with me. I do like the guy. I think it'll be okay me wrestling him with him because he's my coach and stuff. So, his name is John McCann. So he taught me a lot of like the chain wrestling that I know today. My main coach is Nathan Hoy, but these kind of guys have really impacted my wrestling career. So John McCann would be a great match to have against, just because I've known him for so long and know him so well.
Be almost like that trainer versus the master fight. That'd be cool. You know, kind of cool. You could do a good story to it too. You know, and I say it that I mean, obviously, there's probably a billion people you want to wrestle, but at your young age, it would be hard to get booked. Um, I mean, I don't know. Maybe they'd book you. Maybe AEW would book you against Kenny Omega. They might.
Possibly. I don't think that would last too long.
No, but like you said, I mean, you're already ahead of them. Ask them when they started training. It probably wasn't 10. A
No.
lot of these people, yeah, they did backyard stuff. They learned maybe the wrong way. Maybe they did other things, but nobody was able to officially go into a school and learn how to, you know, train. Unless you were like, you know, one of the Hart Foundation, you were part of the Hart family, your father was a trainer, or you came from a wrestling family. Did you learn how to wrestle at a young age?
Yeah, I have to say, like, sorry for interrupting you there, but I have to say, like, see the NWF wrestling, they were going at the same time, maybe when most kids weren't able to do it. So they kind of paved the way and made me think that I could do it at this age. I was inspired by Crusher Crossing and a lot of the NWF kids pro wrestling. That was just completely run by kids at the time. I don't think they'll get away with it now, like, but I had the pleasure of wrestling for their title and stuff. That was the paved the way for kids getting into wrestling. So I don't think I'd be wrestling right now if it weren't for that company.
Really? Well, let me answer Scenic Spots. Why the pro wrestling or why indie wrestling or pro wrestling? Indie wrestling to me has such a different feeling of wrestling. It is made. Oh, hey everybody, this is Loki, your boy. Um, but it has made an impact to me. You know, when I grew up watching wrestling, I was enthralled, and then I got to an age, and then wrestling was kind of dull. Stopped watching wrestling for a long time, but then I got back into it, and I found a local spot. Friend told me about it. It was like $10 tickets, and I went in, and I had the time of my life. I saw, you know, characters. I saw everything that wrestling was to me back then, but on a close level. I was sitting front row. I was meeting people on the intermission. And then I started to notice something, that these guys were wrestling every weekend, some of them 3, 4 shows a weekend. And they just weren't getting talked about. And that kind of irked me a little bit. So I wanted to create a platform where these people would get eyes and ears on them. And around 2020, my YouTube started to take off. I started to go to shows and, film short clips, and some of them took off into the 10 million range. Started to get an audience. So I said, let's use this audience for something decent, and let's try to get eyes and ears on as many indie guys and girls as I can. So I've just been interviewing people on and off. And then in the last year, I kind of ventured into the horror world, and I've been interviewing like indie authors and producers and such like that.
And so I can answer that question as well if he's asking that as well. So what was the question again, sir? So I can answer it as well.
It's great to see you giving indie wrestlers a platform. Why indie over pro wrestling?
I think that India over pro wrestling is because a lot, as I said before, I can say it again. A lot of these guys didn't have a place to wrestle. Maybe a few years ago, like if you weren't good enough, you weren't good enough because you didn't have like your NXTs or anything at the time. So if you didn't get into the WWE, you didn't get into the WWE, or else. But nowadays, you have so much more places to train. Indie wrestling creates the future of wrestling. WWE does not create the future of wrestling because they hire people, and if these people aren't good enough, that's it. But indie wrestling helps these people train. It helps these people wrestle. It helps these people do so much more. Whereas WWE don't care. All they want is the right talent. Where indie wrestling helps grow the future of wrestling. And I think wrestling is where it is at the minute because of indie wrestling, not because of WWE. Because the WWE wouldn't have these wrestlers if it weren't for indie wrestling.
No, for sure. I can 100% agree with that. And there's people out there that I know that started, in wrestling and started training to wrestle in their 30s. Now they know very well in their 30s that they're not going to WWE or getting signed, but they want to work their home promotions. They want to be some kid's hero. They want to be entertaining people on the weekends. So they work local shows, and there's nothing wrong with that. They enjoy that. That's why they got into wrestling. It was a child passion, and they want to work local shows. They don't want the WWE. They don't want to get bigger. They don't have the strength. Some people don't have the time. Some people still work. I had a very interesting talk once with Joe Hendry.
Joe Hendry, yeah.
You- Yep, he came, to a place near me, Chinese restaurant, Kowloon's, and we were sitting there talking, and he's told us straight up he still has a day job, and he has a day job because he wants to pick and choose where he wants to wrestle. He doesn't want the wrestling to decide where he has to make a living. He wants to keep it fun. He wants to keep it a hobby.
Yeah, that's quite good because I think a lot of people think if you don't want this to be your full time job, I don't know why you're doing it. A lot of people say that, but I don't agree with that. I think some people can just find it fun, and some people can enjoy wrestling even if they don't want it as a full time job. They can just do it as a hobby and in the background.
Do you go to horror conventions, comic cons, wrestling conventions? What are your favorite meet and greets? I do. I do, Mighty Molly. I've been going to Monster Expos, and I've been enjoying that. So far, my favorite guest there, I would have to say, was probably Lene Quigley. She was fun. She was great. From Return of the Living Dead and Night of the Demons. I am booked solid. September is booked solid. Every weekend, I am meeting and going to a different horror convention. Starting the 6th at Terracon, 7th Paranormal, which I'll meet the real Annabelle doll. Then the weekend after will be Silver Scream, and then the weekend after that will be Connecticut Horror. A lot of guests. I'm very looking forward to meeting Tom Atkins from Halloween 3. Looking forward to meeting John Cusack, which was just announced. Big actor. Very rare. Brad Dudley from Hellraiser. Heather Langenkamp from Nightmare on Elm Street. Bunch of other people there. It's going to be a wild month, but I am looking forward to doing that. And I like to go to the panels as well because you get to hear actors talking, and it's funny. Actors and wrestlers, they have similarities, but they have differences. Sometimes I feel the actors are even more humble than the wrestlers. They just come out and
They are.
just they tell straight up stories and just act like normal. They don't put on this facade of, oh, I'm this great actor, where sometimes wrestlers do. They have an ego.
They do.
But But I've been loving it. I've been enjoying it. But let me ask you now, you recently, or you've been doing it a while, you've gotten into podcasting yourself.
Yep.
And how
So
did that come about?
So I've been doing my YouTube channel before. I've actually been doing wrestling. I wasn't in podcasting, but at the start, my YouTube channel, Wrestling Revolution with Keaton, was kind of wasn't really expected to be anything amazing. Like I wasn't expecting it to grow. It wasn't expected to grow. But now, kind of when I'm wrestling, I can kind of see wrestling. I was doing a review of a War Games cage, in a wrestling figure cage, and now like I didn't expect it to be where it was. It was just supposed to be like a kind of kids channel, but I've been able to build it, and I've been able to build an audience, which I never really expected. And now I'm quite happy to be doing my YouTube channel. And then my podcasting came about when a wrestler called Crusher Crossing, who started up the NWF Kids Pro Wrestling. I was honored to actually meet that guy, and he decided that he wanted to do a podcast with me because he had seen that I do wrestling at this age, and he understood that I've been doing the YouTube channel and stuff, and I was so happy to do it. I just didn't really know how to do it, like the way you can do StreamYard or anything. I didn't really know how to do it at the time. But Crusher was kind of involved in it. He knew how to do all the podcasts. So we'd done our first episode with my coach Nathan Hoy about Northern Ireland pro wrestling, and it was a great way to even just to see indie wrestlers like the way you do. I was interviewing indie wrestlers, but I was also willing to interview WWE guys, which I didn't really expect. But this podcast has got me relationships with so many different wrestlers, and in the future I could even be booked with loads of these guys. And it's been an honor actually doing this podcast. But it was the idea of Crusher Crossing was how I first started, and I've never really looked back since.
Awesome. No, I mean that is a good concept. Wrestlers interviewing other wrestlers because you make connections. You make a lot of places to go. People to wrestle. And collaboration. There's nothing wrong with collaboration. Again, podcasters should be doing more collabs with each other. Everybody should be doing more collabs because there's just a giant pool of fans of this niche. Whether it's wrestling, horror, whatever the niche is that you're in. These are fans of this. Now they like individual stuff within the niche, but they also are fans of the niche, so they will still tune in. They will still tune into everybody's podcast. Similar to watch wrestling. There's people that watch all wrestling. Now, do they enjoy all the wrestling? No, maybe not, but they will watch it all, give it all at least a chance. I'm very much that person. I'll watch any horror movie. If it's good, I might watch it again. If it's bad, I won't talk about it. That's one thing I do different on my podcast. I don't bring the negativity to it. I don't try to, get rage bait. I don't try to bring up the negative aspects of pro wrestling. I think that pro wrestling has its own way of doing this with Dark Side of the Ring and, all the stuff that's happened. They don't need me to pick and point and choose which parts are bad. I like to promote the good in wrestling because I want the new person that's listening to this to say, hey, there's a local show I keep seeing advertised in my area. I want to check it out. And, getting a new fan into a new show, it makes a difference to me because that, sets up a whole chain reaction. If I wasn't, never walked into denim, I would have never started this podcast. I would have never done any of this.
Yeah, I'm probably the same. Like you're right. Like with the Dark Side of the Ring and stuff, there is so much darker sides of the ring. That's what it's like. I know it's named like that, but there actually is so much darker sides of the ring and darker sides of wrestling. There's so much involved in it that maybe you do want to bring newer people in and not always focus on the negative. So the reason Kayfabe with Keaton was kind of brought about was maybe to do long form conversations with wrestlers, like to talk about their personalities outside of the ring, and people can get to know these people, and then after that they can kind of understand who these people are. But it was never really to try to expose wrestling. I know maybe sounds like that Kayfabe with Keaton, but it was more just to try to bring their in ring personalities out, and it was nothing really to create anything negative. And I think that's maybe why this has become so successful, because people are more used to seeing more darker sides of the ring, like the darker side of the ring, or the Iron Claw movie, things like that. So I think my podcast is a good way, and your podcast is a good way of just bringing the later side of wrestling and getting people into it.
It is. It's smart. It's a smart way of doing it. I mean, I know negativity sells. I know negative things draw. I know people love to listen to it or get involved in it. But sometimes you got to take that draw away and just stay true to what you want. I mean, if you want to see a positive wrestling environment, then you try to keep positive. If you want to find the negativity in it, then you'll find it, but you'll be stuck in it. You'll be stuck with those people. You'll be stuck in those, you know, the trends that are happening that aren't so positive in wrestling, or that are the things that aren't looked at as being, people that want to be booked are going to get booked regularly in higher promotions. You don't want those bad habits.
Exactly. I think that's a great way to think.
Have I ever went to a wrestling convention, and who are my Mount Rushmore meet and greets? I've been to a few wrestling meet and greets, just single meet and greets. I met Charlotte. I met who else did I meet? Um, I'm gonna blank on it because they were so long ago when I went to the WWE meet and greets. A lot of the guys I end up meeting at indie shows. So like I met like Dan Housen at an indie show. I met Orange Cassidy at an indie show. I'll go to indie shows that people are announced. I don't go to the cons so much because they're so expensive. And I compare it to the hard world, they're almost double to three times the price for some of these guys and girls to get autographs. Lines are crazy. Um, but I've bought and acquired autos and stuff over the years. If I had him say I'd meet someone, see, it's hard to say. All my people that I would really want to meet have all passed. Like I would have loved to meet Randy Savage back in the day. He was a great influence. Hogan was too back in the day. I didn't. He came in my area, and the prices were outrageous, and I just didn't get involved. But you know, there was available, but I didn't do it. But I would have loved to meet someone like Savage. I would have loved to meet someone like Andre. I mean, today, if it didn't cost me an arm and a leg, I would meet like Roman Reigns. I think he would be a very good person to meet. I would have loved to meet Bray Wyatt prior to his passing as well.
What's that?
Um, that Bray Wyatt is probably the one single person that got me back into TV wrestling for a little bit. When I started to see the Firefly Funhouse, I got into the TV wrestling. Somebody wants to know what's both of our favorite memorabilia.
Oh,
I would
so
have to say you can go first. I have to think here. I got a few
right.
things.
I know exactly what it is. I don't know if I can get it out here, but um, so there was a. I don't know if you can see him. He's like to the left here. So yeah, I'm actually locking up with him. He's at that photo in the green screen. So it's Kung Fu Eddie Hamill, a Northern Irish wrestler who sadly passed away. But his family told I went to his house and interviewed him a couple of months before he died, and he told his family he wanted to give something to me. And after he died, his family sent me over this, and it was an original poster from British wrestling that was Kung Fu. It was Kung Fu versus Bobby Barnes. She used to tag with Adrian Street and stuff. And this is the
Oh
original
wow.
World of Sport poster from about 50 years ago.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it's hard, but I would have to say I have in the package still a 1980 88 Hulk Hogan Hulkamania, no, Hulk Rules rather headband. It has Titan Sports on. It's Titan Sports still in the package, unopened. I have one that's open too, but that one's unopened. It's either that or my double Hogan autograph. I have it signed Hulk Hogan, and then underneath it's Hollywood Hogan. I pre-ordered that through his the shop that he had down in Florida years ago. Back in 2020. But those would probably be my two favorite wrestling memorabilia right now. I don't know. It's hard. I collect wrestling figures. I collect a lot of indie stuff though too. I have a lot of ring worn jackets and ring trunks and stuff that a lot of the indie guys have worn. I've collected some of that stuff. So I mean, I have I don't know if you heard of the wrestler Anthony Green, but
Mm,
no.
yeah.
I have his, ring jacket from when he started in Chaotic. 'Cause, I mean, I have a lot of, ring worn jackets and ring trunks and stuff that a lot of the indie guys have worn. I've collected some of that stuff. So I mean, I don't know if you heard of the wrestler Anthony Green, but no, I have his, ring jacket from when he started in Chaotic. um, different stuff. But again, I mean, as much as I get into the TV wrestling, I'm always pulled to the indie scene. I'm always just more geared. Even though there's a lot more wrestling on TV than ever before, I still don't watch a lot of it because I
Hmm.
don't have the time. Nighttime, I'm editing videos or doing my own podcasts. You know, today's a special time because you're in UK, but usually I'm doing 8 o'clock at night. And it's just I don't have time for all of this wrestling. But the indie stuff I can keep up with quite easy between their social media and between what they got on YouTube and between me getting to the shows and actually seeing it. It's very easy for me to follow along.
Hmm. Yeah, and getting to know their characters and stuff as well is incredible. You know, you can get to know WWE characters just as well, but knowing these guys, if you know them outside of the ring and you get to get photos with them and stuff, but actually knowing these guys personally and then getting to see their characters and getting to know these guys personally and then getting to see what unfolds in the storylines, I would say is way better than meeting the WWE superstar once and seeing them on TV.
It is. It's a rush almost. I've met a lot of people that I've, when I started watching wrestling, I watched as a fan, and then, I gotten to work some shows, and I've gotten to work backstage. So getting to see these people train or work their match before the show, or even just say hi in the locker room, it's been kind of a rush. I'm marking out like a mark. I'm like, oh my god, because a lot of these guys I've seen them on like IWTV and stuff. But seeing them out of character for just that split second, or seeing them transform into their character, it's quite magical because you'll see someone turn from night to day.
Awesome, yeah, I agree. Do you have my match on the videos? Did you add it in?
I wasn't able because of the internet to upload the match, but what I'm going to do is this video will go out as it's live, but I am going to download it and then add in all the extra stuff that you gave me.
Okay, okay,
And then I'm going to re-upload it
sounds good. Sounds good.
and then re-stream it to all the locations again at a different time zone from me.
Okay, sounds good.
But yes, we do have some of your matches and promos and cool stuff and your training and all of that that I would love people to see because it was intriguing. Um, Again, I'm not at my laptop, so I'm not able to just pull this stuff up. Unfortunately, the phone is still limited with StreamYard. I can only do so much. I wish I could do more. I really do. Um, but I was impressed with the match. I was impressed, like I said, just seeing kids wrestle. It's not something you see all the time. But again, witnessing the maturity, witnessing what you're able to do, it's incredible. It's incredible to have that discipline already at that age installed in you. Similar to someone that went through martial arts, you have that discipline. You know when enough is enough. You know when to hold. You know when to do this, that. You know the psychology of the matches. That's another thing that's really big. How you guys know the psychology already. There's adults that still don't get the psychology of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I'm the longest reigning trainee at the Lions Den as a kid. I think I've been there longest because I've been there from the very first training session for kids. And one of my proudest moments is wrestling for that match for the NWF World Championship. I don't know if you know much about that title, do you?
I don't.
No, so this title isn't ours. This title is a title that came from America. So these kids started up their own wrestling company well over 40 years ago. Just them and no adults or anything. And now and after that in the WF title, they had to retire. They retired after doing 300 after getting 340 people at their shows just fully made by kids. And 40 years later, this guy called Crusher Crossan, who's my co-host on the show, I had watched a lot of the NWF stuff, feeling inspired, thinking I could do it, and he came over to Northern Ireland and donated the belt away after 40 years out of retirement for kids to carry on the path to carry on his legacy. And I actually got to wrestle for that championship, which is a big honor for me.
That's awesome. Have you gotten any titles now? Are you holding any belts?
Not at the minute. No, I'm not holding any belts at the minute.
But I guarantee soon you will. You'll have something around your waist soon. I
Hopefully.
can take it. Um, but I mean, like I said, quite impressive already. You know, how many matches have you had in total?
Well, I've done lots of exhibitions, just because I was younger at the time. Counting them from exhibitions and matches is quite hard. I would say maybe about 5 matches. 5 matches.
Still though, that's still a lot, and that's in front of live crowds, everybody
Yeah.
going, and then you got all the exhibitions that take place with students or other friends, family. I don't know how you guys do it down there, but I mean that's still impressive. Like I said, you're so young. By the time you're 18, 19, you'll have hundreds of matches under your belt. You'll be, like I said, a vet, which is unheard of at that age. The locker rooms in America will be like, "Who's this kid?" And you'll be like, "I've already been doing this for 10 years."
Yeah, it'll be crazy.
Um, it will be though. I look forward. I look forward to following your career because like I said, I think you're gonna go very far. But for others that want to follow you and follow your career, let me ask you: where can people find you on social? Where can they find your podcast? Where can they find all this stuff?
So you can follow me on YouTube, which is Wrestling Revolution with Keaton, where you can see my podcast Kayfabe with Keaton, and my new podcast called The Big Daddy and Son Podcast, which I wanted to promote on this podcast. And then you can follow me Wrestling Revolution underscore Keaton, I think that is um on Instagram, and then Kayfabe Keaton on Facebook.
Awesome, awesome. I'll make sure to subscribe if I'm not already to all three, and just keep touch. And like I say, I always like to a lot of my guests that I bring on, I like to reach back with. So maybe like 6 months to a year, I'm gonna reach back to you and be like, "Hey, what are you doing now? How many titles do you have?"
Yeah,
um,
hopefully I have
but
titles by then. I don't know if I will, like, but
hey, you never know. Anything can happen in wrestling. It really can. Um, Now, do you run your podcast nightly? Is that how it goes?
yeah, I always do it at 7 p.m. UK time. But now I've been off school for summer. I've been more flexible with dates and stuff. So tomorrow, I'm doing it at a different time with Jay Mazing, the first ever micro wrestler on the Micro Wrestling Federation.
Oh wow, that's gonna be a good one. I might
Yeah,
have
I
to
can't
stay
wait
up.
for that one.
I might have to stay up some crazy hours to listen to that.
And and within the podcast Kayfabe with Keaton, I'm doing that, and then also I have a new podcast that I've been doing called the Big Daddy and Son Podcast.
And what's that about? Is that wrestling as well?
Yeah, so have you heard of the British wrestler Big Daddy?
Yeah.
So he was the most popular British wrestler ever, Shirley Crabtree. For people that don't know him, around Britain, he was so popular. Like he was the Hulk Hogan of British wrestling. So big. I thought seeing my dad had so many memories of British wrestling, like when he was a kid watching it on Saturday afternoons, and me being such a British chain wrestling fan. I thought we could maybe add that together. So I asked my dad to do a podcast with me called the Big Daddy and Son Podcast, but my dad would maybe talk about the memories of British wrestling and his memories watching it, where I bring maybe the history of the facts and stuff, and then maybe play a bit of a heel role, mocking my dad and stuff on it, and he'd maybe be the more fun loving guy, where I'm more the expert in the thing, and maybe talk about different topics of British wrestling.
Awesome. That sounds like fun. I'm gonna have to check both of those out. That's great though. I always, like I said, I appreciate wrestling, but also fellow podcasts as well. And then fellow podcasters are preaching the same. Talking about the indie scene, talking about wrestlers, getting people to know wrestling, not just from what they see on the TV, like I said, but getting to see, what it really is, the underbelly, which is the indie scene. The indie scene is that underbelly. And yes, I can help you probably. I don't know if I can guarantee you, something happens in the US, but when you do turn 18, I can at least give you the booker's, information to contact.
Yeah, thanks very
Uh,
much.
there's a tons of people I could give you in contact information
Thank
for.
you.
But again, the US, we have I think there's one state that is now starting with kids wrestling. I don't know. I heard something of it the other night, but for most of the US, there is no kids wrestling right now. 18 is or 17, 18 is about the limit where they'll go. But who knows? Maybe that will change.
Hmm.
You never know. Like I said, the amateur boxing level is younger. You know, tackle football is younger. In some ways, if you wrestle right, it can be safer. So it all depends on what you're doing. If you're going out there and hitting each other with light tubes, obviously it's not safe at all. But if you're going out there and chain wrestling and giving a show and entertaining, then what's the difference between that and a child actor? Doing stunts or doing this or doing that. It all becomes something, positive in that extent. But we are just about out of time. I do thank you for coming on and taking your evening with me. I was going
No
to say
problem.
afternoon, but it's my afternoon. We will keep in touch. I will put this up again with your matches, with all that other stuff you sent me, and make it into a nice little pretty package. But this version is out as well. I'll shoot you over that link though when that does come out.
No problem.
But thank you for coming on, and thank you everybody for tuning in at home. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. We're gonna try to get more and more indie wrestlers from around the world, because let's just face it, it's not just a one town thing. It's worldwide. Thank you everybody, and as always, support indie wrestling. Versace Stoner out.
Goodbye.